Good morning. Welcome to my garden. The light's a little bit harsh, but this is the time I have for a little bit of harvesting. So I garden in Western Pennsylvania, and right now it is scape season. So your garlic throws off a blossom. Hang on. So your garlic throws off a blossom. I always think this looks like a swan's head. Um, and what we want to do, this is basically the bud to the blossom. We want to remove this so that we encourage the plant to put energy into creating the bulb opposed to creating a blossom and seeds and then deciding that it's done. So we're going to cut this off. It smells like garlic. It smells wonderful. You can use this in your cooking. I think my stepmom says she almost always cuts like all of this part off. I usually cut like kind of this part because I find it gets like kind of hard and chewy. But you can chop this up and use this in your cooking anywhere that you would use garlic, which is wonderful for us because usually by this point in the season, all of our stored garlic has either been used or has started to sprout. So it kind of helps span the gap between our stored garlic and when we harvest our garlic here in probably 3 weeks to a month. So let's get to harvesting. Now, I have never successfully grown cauliflower. It's always ended up incredibly covered in those green worms to the point that it just wasn't even salvageable. This year, right now I've got 5, they're not huge, but I've got 5 heads of, I would say, usable cauliflower. Now, we had one right here. This was the first one right here to develop. And we let it go too long. And so that got fed to the chickens. So today, I need to get these harvested so they don't just end up being chicken food. As I sit and take the greens off my cauliflower, there's a interesting. I'll show you. We've got right in there. Can you see that? Something's developing right there. I don't know if that's a little larva of some variety, but this is going to go to the chickens. So I'm all about, in some ways, lazy gardening. I like there to be some like natural balance. I don't really want to have to be coming out here spraying and hand picking and doing all of those kind of things that feel kind of labor intensive. So about observation and finding natural ways for the garden to take care of itself. So something that I had an old-time farmer that was at a farmer's market that I managed one summer. He told me to always make sure there are small flowers in blossom in your garden because those attract your good beneficials and help to manage your pests. So it's one of those things, sometimes you hear something but you don't fully comprehend until sometimes by accident things happen or things happen to work out. So I've always had that in my head, but last year, I kind of intentionally planted more radishes around my squash and that kind of thing because I've read that and I've heard that it helps to manage your squash bugs by just letting them go to blossom and attract your beneficials. But last year we'd had some turnips that overwintered and they blossomed, and so very early in the season we had a lot of little tiny blossoms in the garden, and then kind of had a weird spring. So I had planted extra radishes for around the squash, but also the radishes that we had planted to eat ended up blossoming really quickly. The arugula, the lettuce, like it was like a really cold spring and then it got really hot very quickly. So everything that didn't really grow big enough to start to harvest bolted really quick. So we had a ton of blossoms in our garden. And last year we had less pest pressure from cucumber beetles and squash bugs. So again, one of those things, you don't fully comprehend it until you see it. So with that in mind, we kind of intentionally did that again this year. So left some things to overwinter with the intention of them blossoming early, which they did. And then planted things kind of thick with the idea of harvesting some and letting some go to blossom. And I've never been able to grow cauliflower before. It's always been completely covered in those green worms, which I've always called cabbage worms, but I don't think that's accurate. But anyway, there's something to this. I would love for other people to experiment with it because I want to know, is this just a fluke? Is there something else happening? And I'm attributing it to all the blossoms in my garden? Or is that the thing? Is that the thing that seems to be working? So again, what we found is, or what we think, my little head cauliflower. So what we think is all the blossoms early and continuous, bringing in your beneficials. Because I feel like the world of insects is so complex that we can't even begin to comprehend all the workings in our garden of the balance of the good and the bad bugs and all the critters we never even see that are contributing to the balance in our garden. So one of my favorite TED Talks, I'm an educator, and Sir Kenneth Robinson He said in one of his talks, if all insects disappeared from the earth, all life would end within, I think, 50 years. If all humans disappeared from the earth, all life would flourish. I feel like that's a really big lesson for us, to not attack the creepy crawlies in our life so quickly, because we don't understand the inner workings and how it all works together. We can observe and we can try to steward it, but we can't control it, and we don't fully understand it, I don't think, unless maybe we have a doctorate in it, which I do not. So there's your thought of the day. All right, so I've got, as I've mentioned, I have never grown cauliflower successfully. Now I know these aren't like, sustain us through the winter, never have to go to the grocery store, harvest right here. But nevertheless, it is a harvest that I've never successfully had in 20 years of gardening. Not that I plant cauliflower every year, but there's a success. So now let's feed this to the chickens, and then let's harvest some broccoli. Hello, ladies. How's everybody doing today? I think I just got yelled at by Katie. Hi, Goldie girl. Does anybody else just stop and watch the chickens periodically for just entertainment value when you have them? I find them to be highly entertaining. So here's our broccoli bed. Now some of these I have harvested already, and I just have the little side shoots. Some of these are starting to kind of stretch out a little bit more, and that's getting close to blossom, so I definitely need to get that harvested. I'm just trying to get to the point where I understand that sweet spot between kind of getting your maximum harvest and letting them go too long and starting to blossom. Like this head right here looks about perfect to me, whereas over here, and I provided this as a little side shoot, that's starting to blossom.